On the marketing front, I'm trying to remember what the percentages were, but Lyda, I don't know if you remember Tiffany Schlane when she was at the conversation saying, you know, of the money that she raises for a short film or a full-length feature, I feel like she said it was half and half. Like half goes to the production budget and half goes to like marketing and distribution.
Yeah, or even less. I mean,
Yeah.
now it's you know, like that the marketing would be more of her budget. Probably.
Yeah, and you know, certainly is spending a lot of her time on it, and you know, she's one of the few examples of someone who figured out a way to get her short film, The Tribe, onto iTunes, and for a while last year it was like the #1 selling short on iTunes, you know, outselling, you know, Pixar's latest shorts.
And I'm glad that Tiffany Schlane is out there saying that, you know, because I remember when I worked in film post-production in New York, I would talk to a lot of independent filmmakers about their budget. We always had this budget conversation because they were coming to me, you know, to figure out how much is the 16 to 35 millimeter blow-up going to cost. And the #1 thing I used to always say is, how much are you setting aside for marketing and promotion of your film? 0. You know, they all had this dream that if they just got into Sundance, everything would take care of itself. And I go, boy, you know, I don't think you should spend $40,000 on a 35 millimeter blow-up if you're not going to also spend $40,000 on getting the film out there, because you're going to have this beautiful 35 millimeter print, and this was at the time when you had to have a 35 millimeter print. But if no one sees it, you know, if you're going to spend $40,000 for one festival, you know, what are you going to do after that? You know? And what's wonderful now is I hope more filmmakers start, you know, Schlane's example is a really good one to think about the holistic picture, that it's about art and it's about reception.
Getting your art seen. Right.
You know, because especially if you know, all these postmodern structuralist theories, if the art is in the reception, you better find some viewers out there, otherwise maybe the art won't even exist in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I actually talked to, for the ITVS project, which is I think now on their website, and I forget what they've termed it, but it's like a report from the field or something. And you know, I talked to filmmakers who would hire someone off of Craigslist and pay them like $9 or $10 an hour to just sit around and go look at blogs that related to this film. And so, you know, one example was with King Corn, you know, looking for food and agriculture blogs that, you know, would post a clip from the film or would do an email interview with the filmmakers or like something to get that little blog audience of, you know, whatever, it might just be 500 or 1,000 people that read that blog. But, you know, some person at $10 an hour hired off Craigslist, you know, maybe spends 2 hours communicating with the owner of that blog and, you know, sending them some production stills. And
I think just one thing to address your question before, what I foresee in the future, and we don't do it right now because, as I mentioned, it's just a financial part of it, that you'll see functionality where sites will be able to give individual filmmakers self-service functionality, and it's something we'd like to do in the future, where you might go to a website and you know, maybe you'll get charged a little bit up front just to put your stuff online. I don't think $500, but you know, some sort of minimum where it could be completely self-service and go through and publish yourself. Potentially end up on your own private site, or maybe even apply to get into an online catalog. But I think there was some services doing it.
CreateSpace
I think
does
was
do
doing
that
it
now. You know, they're a division of Amazon, and you know, if you have just a movie, you can give it to them, I think, with no upfront charges, and they'll either sell it as a DVD that gets printed on demand, or they'll sell it through Amazon's video on demand service.
So I think you'll see more and more of that.
Yeah.
And you might not see it from iTunes. I sense that iTunes just doesn't want people tripping over the titles that they're going to be selling in bulk in many cases, so they spend all their time on that.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, like I just have a philosophical issue with Apple selling all of this technology to filmmakers, you know, whether it's Final Cut or the laptop or, you know, the iPhone that they use, and then like, nope, you can't come into our marketplace, you know?
But it took a while too with like audio. I mean, now pretty much anyone can get their audio on iTunes, and I think video is a much tougher market for them, and that's why they're really resistant to kind of cluttering up the store, and they're forcing people to go through these monopoly aggregates.
I can only guess what they're doing, but it's probably just somebody sitting there with a spreadsheet saying, yeah, we can add this functionality, but we've got other priorities right now.
Yeah.
Well, even I think their music is not self-service either, but it's almost self-service.
Right, you go to CD Baby and
it's like $15. Right, but I think the video market for them is, there are free video podcasts. They're dealing with like rentals, which you don't have to deal with music, and I think they're really worried about the perception of scaring off Hollywood, because they're already having trouble with like HD movies and some movies that you can't rent, and they're really trying to present this consistent experience.
What do you mean having trouble with HD movies?
I would theorize that the reason that you need an Apple TV to do an HD rental of a movie is because of the concern of the studios having HD in the iTunes DRM on a computer. So you can only rent HD movies if you have an Apple TV, which is kind of like a lot harder to get the content off of than a regular Mac.
Well, it's going to reduce their market from a few hundred million to a few thousand.
Right.
Yeah, doesn't Apple have another problem that Apple TV has very low numbers compared to Netflix, who I think is the quiet giant here, who's just, as soon as at any moment they could turn on the floodgates and kind of own that online network, online network-based movie rental business.
Yeah, but they're having the same issues, in that it's the content experience is really inconsistent. Like on iTunes, there are movies that you can only buy, because the studio's like, well, if we're getting $15,
right, but Apple's model is dependent on buying this box, whereas Netflix could work with everyone's PC and laptop.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the Netflix thing is
iTunes too.
It's hard to think about how Netflix will work, because I don't know what they pay filmmakers or distributors for the rights to stream that movie, like how that deal works. But in a way, I think a lot of what that Netflix streaming is going to be used for in the next year or two is like for someone to sort of sample a movie and watch the first 10 minutes and decide, maybe if they want to watch the whole movie, they'll just add it to their Netflix queue, and then rent it. So, in theory, that makes Netflix buy more copies of your DVD to sort of satisfy that demand. But I wonder, David, as it shifts over to like just purely viewing it on the computer or viewing it on the TV, if the business deal is going to be favorable for filmmakers.
The Netflix's challenge is for them to get to the TV through digital distribution is they're going to have to rely on somebody else.
Yeah, they're going to partner with TiVo.
Well, they'll TiVo, and then what is Netflix in that case? Well, they're a website where maybe somebody can order stuff, but TiVo completely controls the distribution of that. And if TiVo wants to deliver Spider-Man from somebody else, they can switch out Netflix anytime
but Jim,
they want.
I was at Netflix last month, and like their whole business is totally now about building that service into like any new piece of electronics equipment. So like any new TV, any new DVD player. There are now, you can go buy a Blu-ray player that has built-in, Netflix.
Yeah, they have tremendous amount of clout, but I see that if I was in their shoes, I'd be very worried about how I'm going to control the distribution channel and how TiVo can go right to the content owners at some point and say, why do you need Netflix?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of their value right now is their whole logistics, their delivery channel, which they won't control when they go to digital.
Yeah. And what do you look, the movies that like Xbox offers, because they also sell movies in the Xbox Live marketplace, but my sense is that it's like very oriented to like the 14-year-old to 20-year-old demographic. It's like every superhero movie and slasher pick that you could possibly want to watch.
Netflix is now on the Xbox.
Oh, are
well. Yeah, they're actually doing HD movie streaming to the Xbox 360. So that's another box.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many like documentaries you could buy on that marketplace.
It's Netflix catalog.
Oh, right.
It's the same.
Right, I just meant that. That will probably overtake, I guess, whatever service Microsoft built.
That's interesting. I know it's getting to be 1:30, and I know we promised we'd end, it's 1:25, and so this went very quickly. And I don't know, one of the things I'd hoped that we could explore was exactly what we might do very specifically for Boston. We didn't get there, but maybe there's a way of continuing this conversation again, and or making links to one another somehow so that we can figure out some ways that we can, bring the producing community to I don't know, to some of the services that some of you might offer. Maybe there's a way of, for example, putting together a whole Boston package of filmmakers. There would be enough of them, you know, to meet your 20, for example. I don't know, but these are conversations we could continue, I hope.
You could have the Boston Baked Beans channel.
The baked beans.